when you have a senior design project, right? To show that you really got everything that they've been trying to teach you for 4 years, okay? Or whatever, how many years. Okay, so, or you have some kind of big evaluation project. I know here, for example, in the the CoMed School of Fashion and Design, they have a big fashion show. If you get a chance to go to it, it's amazing. It's like watching Project Runway or something. These students come out with a whole line of their designs. Wow, it's really pretty exciting. Okay, that didn't happen overnight. So, if we look at Bloom's taxonomy, so Bloom said, let's look at the things we're trying to do with the kids' heads. Okay, and let's see how we categorize these things. And so, he started out with the knowledge level. That's just learn the information. Okay, learn the capitals of the country. All right. You might not know where Latvia is. You might not, you know, that, if I said, oh, if I was a teacher and I said, oh, they knew that Latvia was the country of the capital, then therefore they get it, they understand that country. Not, right? Okay, it's not even beginning to scratch the surface of what they need to understand. So it's just the knowledge level. It's important, but it's not the end. Comprehensive level means you have to understand the information. So remember, when you were a little kid in school, way back when, the first thing you did was write your spelling words, write the definitions, right? Then what was the next thing? Use them in a sentence, which is what I asked you to do. Okay, because that's a little harder than just spelling the same word over and over and over again, right? I could tell these ladies they could spell constipation perfectly, but they might not know what it is. Okay, now they do. Aren't you glad you came to this class? If anything, you got one piece of information out of it. Okay, application. You use the information. Most of you that are teaching physics, math, some of your computational sciences, this is where a lot of your energy is with kids. Apply this, you know. Here's the equation. Here's the example. Now do 700 odd number problems. Okay? So we apply it over and over and over again. But then, after we get to those levels, which is pretty much where most of our high school teaching takes place, okay, we try to push it up a little more. Not always successful, depends on what courses you're in, is the analysis level. Break the information down into the component parts. So, it's not just a matter, you're actually taking this bridge or this thing, physics thing, and break it down into its component parts, okay, to actually analyze it. So, for example, you might have physicists, again, I pick on the physicists, you might ask them to do an extended force diagram. Label all the forces on this diagram. Okay, they usually forget the normal force or one of those, right? Okay, but you have all the forces that that means you have to analyze exactly what's going. Where's the friction force? Where's gravity? Blah, 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 blah. That's moving to a higher level there. In chemistry, it might be you're analyzing a compound. Okay, identify. We had a few chemists here, one or two. Oh, bless you. I taught organic chemistry for so many years. It's funny. Anyway, so you might want to analyze something. If you're in business, okay, you might want to analyze a business plan. Where are the weaknesses? Where are the strengths? Okay. Synthesis is put information together in new and different ways. So this might design something. Okay. And the hardest level is the evaluation level. And that's to judge the information. Okay. Evaluate this art exhibit. Go to the art museum right now, look at one of their new special exhibits, and evaluate it as an exhibit. You have to know a lot of information to be able to do that, about art, about design, about visitors' interests, everything, right? Okay, so that becomes a very high level of thing. So anyway, so Bloom said, that's how we look, we have to divide what we want to do. So when you go into a classroom, you have a goal. It can't be, I want to teach the Pythagorean theorem. Okay. They'll know the Pythagorean theorem. What do you mean by know? The a squared plus b squared equals c squared, and then you put the cosine on it if you want to be, whatever. But anyway, they have that theorem. Okay? But you might want to apply that theorem to a series of triangles. That's a different goal, okay? So now let's look at those, look at your objectives. Okay, oh wait, let me go back. All right, so we have what we call, and I have a list for these later. Okay, these are what I call Bloom verbs. They're not the only verbs that are in there, and I'll give you a more extensive list. As a matter of fact, I can do that now. But this is a hint as to what you are doing in the classroom. So for example, if I say, at the end of this lesson, the students will be able to illustrate X, Y, and Z, then I'm on that level. These are not, it's not a pure distinction, but it gives you some idea. So here, so this is and you can Google Bloom, Google. I lived BG before we met. When I did my doctoral thesis, I actually had to go to a library and look up books, chemical abstract, and read them in German and French. And I also walked to school uphill both ways. It's great. It's great what you can find for information. So if you're really interested, again, this is just a hint. I'm giving you an exposure for something. I'm just trying to raise your level as to what you're doing with students. And it's not just, okay, I got to go and teach them these problems. Really think about what you're doing. Okay? This will also help you later on in life when you have kids. Okay? And you're going to want to teach them, because parents are always teaching. You're going to want to keep raising their level of thought. Raise their level of thought. This is what we need to do. Okay? Just because knowledge level is sort of not important anymore, because everybody can Google, right? Oh, I love Google. Okay, so let's sort our objectives. So now you have your objectives. You underline a verb. And what I did was I put some categories here. Here's knowledge, and here's all the categories we talked about. You just take your Post-it and stick it there where it fits in the category. And if it doesn't fit anywhere, put it on the whiteboard. So whatever you wrote, you underline your verb. Figure out what level were you teaching, and put your Post-it there. Use the higher one. Okay. You want to give yourself a better point. Because you never, what does that really mean? I understand you. Don't you like that when somebody, you're crying, your heart's broken, and somebody comes up, I really understand you. Bullshit, you do not. Nobody understands me. Understand is a very difficult word, okay? It's very hard to evaluate, because we want to be able to evaluate it. So it's one of the levels, it's listed on the list, but I try to avoid it because it's hard to say what do you really mean by they understand it. Okay, so we have some really good identified things. Now these are fine. So whatever that red black thing is, who wrote this? Okay, whatever red black is. We want them to understand the red black. Okay, what do you mean by that?
So there's a data structure with a red black tree that, well, in my experience, is actually extremely difficult to understand. So we want to be able to know how to insert like information to that tree.
Oh, okay, so you know what? You're no belong here. Okay, you're going to apply this to something, right? Okay, so in other words, your understanding wasn't I don't think that's fine. Okay, so you're getting the idea of what I'm talking about. Okay, so here we have, here we have all the understanding. Everybody understands it. Recognize, right. Now here we have more understandings. Okay, understand that, be able to balance an oxidation reduction reaction. Understand, over here, navigate through something. Okay. And here we draw conclusions, determine, describe, analyze. Okay, so you get the idea. Good. You're good students. I'm proud of you. You did a good job. Okay. So next time, though, when you're getting ready for your lesson with your students, you want to clearly identify what you want those students to do. Okay. Not only I want them to be able to if I recite Newton's laws, that's one thing. If I apply them to a new situation, that's another thing. Okay, so you want to make it clear what do you want them to do here. Let me see what else I have because time is going by fast. Okay, there's also goals. I skipped the heart and the body. Okay, just looked at the head. If you're dying, curiosity, you have nothing to do tonight, you might want to go to the Bloom's Taxonomy on Wikipedia, and they have a whole bunch of verbs for heart and for all the learning goals that you might want to use. But that's not the purpose here. I just wanted to expose you to this concept. Okay. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay. Now, how does this apply to our next step? So determine acceptable evidence. How will we know that you have arrived? Okay. So the first one, identify the desired results. I tell my student teachers, if the bus driver doesn't know where you're going, you're never going to get there, right? So in your class, okay, if you want, as your goal, you want all the students to achieve a certain level, you got to keep that in mind. Otherwise, you'll be all over the place, be all over the place, be all over the place. You'll never get there if you don't have a good destination. How many of you will actually be teaching like I'm teaching, talking to a group? Okay, some of you will. Students love to get you off track. Okay? They like to get you off track. They like to distract you. They do anything. You did it when you were in school. Get the teacher off the subject. Good. We don't have to listen to her for a while. Okay? We'll go on and on. There are some teachers that are very easy to get off the track. Okay? That's okay. Acknowledge their questions. But if you have a clear goal of what you want them to do, it's very easy to get back on the track. Okay? Because especially with younger students, they'll ask you all kinds of bizarre questions. Okay, so we have to know the second piece. So the first piece was, where are we going? The second piece is, how are we going to test them? How are we going to acknowledge, know where they were? A teacher must know before she starts a lesson or unit how he or she will assess the students have achieved the goals of the lesson or the unit. Okay? So how will I know that they got there? Yes?
Does this need to be an immediate understanding, or is it like this great homework, 3 days from now count?
It's up to you. Okay, what you want to do. I'll tell you, in school, in teaching, we look at 3 kinds of assessments. The first are diagnostic. That might be something, that's a pre-test. And you might want to do that, especially if you're teaching some, like, when I taught physics, I always had my own little pre-math test that I gave the kids to find out, and it didn't count for their grade, but it told me where their math skills were, because a lot of physics problems end up in the math pile. Okay, so you might want to do something like that. The second is a formative assessment, and that's one that occurs during instruction. The worst thing is you go to a college class, okay, and you go through these lectures and you do this and you do this, and then there's one test at the end that makes or breaks you. Has anybody ever had that? One or two. It's horrible. All along. So in other words, just because I'm walking along, I'm the teacher, doesn't mean all the little chickens are following me. Okay, I might have lost some in the crowd. So what you want to do is possibly give a spot test. One thing, like if you're having a help session, is we have teachers do this. It's called an exit pass. Okay. Okay, before you leave today, here's a problem. Don't put your name on it. Just do it. Maybe it's something or some question you're interested in. Okay? And collect those. And then you'll see right away. And then you can go through them and say, okay, yeah, half of the class really understood. They were able to do this because this is what I was trying to accomplish. You might even stop in the middle, a spot quiz or whatever. Okay, does that answer your question? Okay. The end thing is the summative. So we have diagnostic, formative, summative assessments. The summative assessments, usually that's the big thing where there's 100 kids in the room and they're all, filling in the bubbles or whatever. And that is usually, unfortunately, the one that usually informs their grade. Okay, informs their grade. I can't, that is probably one of the worst ways to teach or evaluate a student. Remember I talked to you how important it is to evaluate? You know very well how horrible one test is not a picture of you, right? And I have horror stories in my life where, personally, where I got grades on a test because I was sick or something and, determines your future or whatever. It's not fair. So one snapshot is not really a fair picture. It's done a lot at universities because you have mass numbers of students and you can't do anything about it. You can't go tell your professor, you're doing this all wrong. You can't say that, this is not right. But that's not very good pedagogy. Okay. But unfortunately, to become a college professor, you do not have to ever take a course in education. You don't have to ever take a course in education. So what happens is most college professors teach the way they were taught. They lecture, okay? They turn around, they look at you, and then they go lecture some more. Okay? And so that's not Drexel professors. That's at other places. Drexel professors are better. But we're trying to change that scenario a little bit, and teachers are expected to, we get evaluated for our teaching. But anyway, as I said, you don't have a lot of control about what happens in the class, but in your little sessions, certainly you can. Okay, any other questions? That was a very good question. Okay, so you can, and if you have a help session, give your own little test at the end. Okay, just to see if the kids are with you. It's not easy to design a good assessment. Okay, so making good tests is very hard. Okay, what are the most difficult tests to make up? Multiple choice tests. A good multiple choice test is extremely difficult to make. Okay, because a lot of times, if they're not well made, the answers are obvious, right? Okay. But if you look at, if you talk about SATs or your AP tests or MCATs, GCATs, PCATs, whatever you have, all those tests, those questions go through cycles of review, and they look at outliers, and they do statistical analysis of, okay, if the answer is B and everybody chose C, why, blah, blah, blah. There's extreme screening, and so it's hard to make up a good multiple choice test. It's hard to make up any good test. But if you know what your goal is, if you know what you're trying to test, it's a little easier. And a variety of assessments should be used. We're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. So just to use problems, I don't know how your kids are graded, but just to have an exam at the end, or one paper or two papers or something isn't the best way to evaluate students. Now, both the content of the lesson and the level of critical thought desired in the goals must be considered when designing an assessment. So, hello? You don't want to go? Now what happened? Oh, example. So I can ask on a test, label the mitochondria in this cell, or I can ask the students, if the mitochondria is removed from a cell, how will the cell activity be altered? Notice the difference in those two questions, right? Okay, one is asking just to put your finger out a mitochondria. A student might have no clue what the function of that organism is, or that entity is within the cell. Okay, but the test questions have to match. So obviously the first question, the teacher was just asking some knowledge level. That's all she cared about, or he or she cared about. And the second one, we're actually looking at for someone to understand, or apply, or explain something. Make sense? Okay, so your questions have to match your objectives. After we set our goals, and we know how we're going to have these kids tested, then now we begin to plan all the learning activities that will prepare our students for that assessment. Okay. So you don't just sit down and say, okay, I have a lesson to teach you. I'm going to do A, B, C, D. This is what I'm going to do. You have to think of why are you going to do this? What is the expected outcome? How will I know the students got there? And then, now I can plan my activities. A lot of you, it's just help sessions, right? You're just help sessions. But you can make your help sessions a little more interesting, right? Little activities. Bring in some blocks or something instead of just... Okay. Remember, a lesson is a design, not a plan. Okay? A design is the arrangement of details which make up a work of art. I observe many students, teachers, blah, 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 and when their goals, their assessments, and the lessons work together, it's a work of art. It's not easy to do. Okay, it takes a while to learn it. Your lessons must prepare your students